Hey, and welcome back to the podcast. Pleased to be joined today by Alex Hall. Alex, great to have you here.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
No worries at all. Looking forward to the conversation today. And to kick things off, as always, do you want to give our listeners a little bit of info about exactly what it is that you do and help people with?
Yeah, of course. So I am Alex Hall, the DNA fat loss coach, and basically I help coach men and women to lose fat, typically the last little bit of weight. So I tend to work with, should we say, healthy people who do many things right. They're exercising well, they're eating well, but they struggle to lose that last bit. And I take a very data-driven, kind of analytical approach using DNA testing. So my clients do a saliva test. They get over 100 insights into how their body works specific to them. And we use that
Yeah.
data to really tailor their approach and help them find sustainable solutions to long-term fat loss and overall improvements in health.
Amazing. Sounds really, really interesting. Definitely keen to dig into the details of that. But why go down that very specific avenue amongst all the myriad of ways people coaching in that kind of health fat loss kind of space?
Great question. So it all began, I could say it all began when I was like 14 and I started getting into health, but the real kind of pivotal moment for me was I studied engineering at university, was not very good. I spent more time studying health and well-being whilst at university than I did actually my degree. And then I graduated and I thought, well, I've got a lot of kind of problem-solving skills, analytical skills, which I've developed through this degree. I don't want to go into engineering. What kind of numerical kind of analytical areas can I go into? And I basically went into marketing analytics for a health and well-being company, e-commerce company, and I did that for about
Yeah.
3 years. Managed a team by the end of it, and it was all pretty good. It was a great kind of graduate experience, lots of responsibility and stuff. The challenge I had with it was that I was basically in charge of marketing one-to-many products. Okay, so single
Okay.
product that it's like, right, this will solve not everyone's problems, but like this will solve a massive part of the market's problems. Should we say
Yeah.
copy and paste solutions? And because I was very data driven, I would constantly look at the numbers. What I unfortunately realized was that the solutions we were selling would cause people to lose weight in the short term, and then very, very quickly, within a few months, they'd gain back tremendous amounts of weight, which sadly they'd
Okay.
then go back onto our products to help them lose weight again. And so a massive proportion of the sales were coming from repeat buyers, which
Yeah.
in my head was not right. It was a fantastic business model, as I'm sure we can
Yeah.
agree. Um, we had low acquisition costs, we had high retention because people would buy the products, use them, lose weight for a wedding, for example, lose 10 kilos in a stupid amount of time, gain it all back
Mm.
within 3 months, go, oh, the thing I did last time worked because they associate that kind of
Yeah.
positive influence of the product, and then they'd do it again. They'd repurchase and rebuy. Yes, and so after a few years, I kind of began to realize that more and more, and it just didn't sit very well with me. So I then basically left on moral terms. And I then, about 6 months later, I started my own coaching business, and I vowed to do basically the opposite of what that company was doing. So that was selling one-to-many, basically masses, selling to the masses a general
Yeah.
product which would help some people, but generally it would be a short-term unsustainable solution. It was so extreme. It was just, you just couldn't do it for a long-term period of time. And so what I started doing was coaching in a very sustainable kind of principle-based way, very data-driven, very unique, personalized to the individual. And then in
Mm.
2020, I got the opportunity to partner up with a DNA testing company, which I'll be honest, I was really skeptical about. So I did it myself. I got totally overwhelmed by the data, which is funny because I'm a data guy.
Yeah.
And I literally took me like 3 months to actually dig into and start to kind of unpick the data that I was presented with. And then I tried a few things like, oh, I feel different. That's strange. Oh, I'd never thought about that. Oh, that's going quite well. That's good. Let me try something else. Oh, that's also working quite well. That's interesting. And so I did that enough, and to the point I was
Yeah.
like, oh wow, I would have never thought of these. I was active. I was working out 6-7 days a week. I was, should we say, eating my meals out of Tupperware boxes. Most of my meals, I was doing a lot of cooking. I was, should we say, doing everything by the book, but not getting the results that I wanted.
Yeah.
And I was also in the kind of embarrassing position of being a coach who like couldn't get myself that great results at the time. And this kind of unlocked for me, basically just unlocked like the ability to get myself amazing results. And I was like, oh my God, if I take this into my coaching, what can I do for my clients? And then I started doing that and just saw better and better things, kind of dive deep into the science. But a lot of people, when they hear DNA fat loss coach, they think, oh, you must spend time in the lab, you must wear a white coat, lab coat, and probably like talk in really complicated ways. And I don't do any of that. I buy a DNA kit off this company that I've worked with for like 4 or 5 years. It arrives at your door, you spit in a tube, you send it off to their lab, you then get results back to your phone. I then download a roughly 200-page report. I then look
Yeah.
at that and use that data purely to drive the actions and prioritization of things that we do within the coaching that I run. Okay, so the ultimate driver of change is not necessarily information, but implementation, right? So there is
Yes.
infinite information out there. The health world space is annoyingly, should we say, oversaturated information. So much of it competing. To get views on Instagram or whatever these days, you have to say something totally the opposite of what people think they should be reading, which
Yeah.
drives many, many problems in of itself. And so the solution here, in my opinion, is stop listening to what everyone else is doing. Understand your body. When you deliver your saliva, get that analyzed. This isn't someone else's data. This isn't anything that's going to benefit anyone else. This is for you specifically. And so then should we say, the drive to implement that information is significantly higher than if you just read a blog
Yeah.
article that's like, oh, this could be useful for me, but I don't know. Whereas if you see data that's like, eat more of this based on saliva that I submitted, or I'm super sensitive to this thing, I should probably reduce it. I'm probably going to do something about that. And that's what I've seen in my coaching. It just drives a lot of efficiency and clarity, which we could extrapolate that across multiple different business analogies or whatever. But I think it's just a very effective way of creating change without soaking up lots and lots of time.
Yeah, I see. I think that's interesting. I think, the health, fitness, wellness space as a whole is obviously massive, filled with all kinds of influencers, supplements, dramatic results as well. And as you kind of alluded to, I think a lot of that is geared around quick fixes, like rapid transformations from wherever you happen to be to peak, probably aesthetics in as short a time as possible, but most likely not even achievable. And even if an element of it was achievable, not sustainable by what you're saying.
Exactly. I came from a world of quick fixes, in short, selling products that delivered, we're talking 800 calorie diets, 600 to 800 calorie diets in, should we say, sachet form. So, okay, I'm going to put this into a shaker, mix it with water. That's my breakfast. I'm going to take this thing, mix it with hot water. That's my lunch. And then this bar is my dinner, right? 200 calories each, 600 calories for the day. I think 800 calories for men. Typical guy is about 2,000, 2,500, depending on activity. Calories just to like maintain weight. So that's a dramatic, right? You're cutting that number into a third or into quarters, basically. So Yeah, but hugely unsustainable. What happens when you don't give your body fuel for, a number of weeks? That level of fuel and the kind of quality nutrition that you need, you feel like rubbish, you perform rubbish, you sleep poorly, you lose dramatic amounts of body weight. But this is important kind of thing to understand. A differentiation between weight and fat. So I call myself a fat loss coach. It's a
Yep.
very important thing to note. If I lose weight, that
Mm.
can be water, carbohydrates, fat, muscle mass, right? Water and carbs will kind of fluctuate aside, so we'll put those aside. So it's mostly fat and muscle. Muscle mass
Yep.
is one of the driving indicators, we say, of long-term health, longevity, health span. This term health span. So it's like, when I'm 80, can I walk around? Can I pick things up, put things on the shelf? Am I able to do the things that I want to do? Can I play around with my grandkids? That sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Muscle
Yeah.
mass is basically a massive, massive driver of health span, along with longevity. So when people lose dramatic amounts of weight very quickly, they are at huge risk of burning up significant portions of muscle mass. And muscle mass is very difficult to build. You have to be very intentional about building it. And as you get older, it gets
Yep.
harder. So, if there's a 50-year-old man or woman who decides to lose 20 kilos very, very quickly for a wedding, they might lose 10 kilos of fat, which is great. That's going to have all sorts of health benefits, but they might also lose 10 kilos of muscle. Now, 10 kilos of muscle is, you're talking a decade of progress of like consistent weight training, or depending on your age and your training activity that you've done in the past, training history. It's huge amounts to undo that is so, so difficult to claw back. And your quality of life after that point is just going to be like lower. You're going to be at greater risk of falling. You're going to be at greater risk of muscle is kind of body armor, right? If I fall
Yep.
over, the muscle will protect me, or I'm also more likely to not fall because of the muscle mass, because I have that strength to kind of react, bring myself back up. If God forbid, if a car ran into me, fat is a bit of a bit of a barrier, but muscle mass is also a barrier, right? So if I lose that muscle mass, I'm way more likely to get bones broken, to cause massive damage. And if an older person breaks their bones, so I can't remember the stats exactly off the top of my head. If someone in their like 60s or 70s or 80s falls over and breaks a bone, the risk of them dying in the next 5 years is like 30-40% or something, because
Yeah. Yeah.
everything
Wow.
just drops off a cliff. Because let's say they're in hospital they take a while to recover the broken bone. They're probably static, and the old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. So if they're static, they're not activating their muscle mass, so their body just burns through it.
Yep.
And then when they are recovered, they have no strength. They're probably going to fall over again. They've probably, not been eating the way they should. And it's just sadly a very, very steep downhill curve and risk of death, sadly. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that in mind, then, as a clearly an undesirable outcome, an unsustainable way, I guess what led you to developing more sustainable methods in the first place, and then layering in that DNA testing on top of it?
Yeah. So seeing it myself, seeing the data of other people, I lost weight, I've gained weight, I've lost weight, gained weight, lost weight. We call it yo-yo dieting. And sadly,
Yep.
every time you lose dramatic amounts of weight, some of that is muscle mass. When you gain the weight back, almost all of it's fat. So over the time, you're getting fatter and losing muscle. Your health is deteriorating despite going through this lose and gain
I
period.
see.
I'm a data guy. Like, if the data points to that stuff, I can't morally sell something that will not help someone long term.
Yep.
Perhaps for worse of business, but for better of my principles and the people around me who end up working with me. I just can't. I'm at a stage where I can't sell something I don't believe in. So I spent a lot of time developing my own
Yeah.
understanding, my own knowledge, seeing what works in other people, and then just taking the most tailored individual approach I can with everyone who I work with.
Interesting. And when you work with someone, how long do you typically work with them for?
Yeah, good question. So it varies. You'll get bored of me saying this by the end of it, but it's all personalized to the individual, right? So when I run sales calls, catch-up chats, whatever you want to call them, I often get people saying, "Oh, how much does it cost? Like, how does your program work?" And I can't tell them
Yeah.
because it depends. It depends on what your goals are, what your challenges are. I have people who work with me for 6 months who want to lose, more dramatic amounts of weight. The majority are probably 3 months who come to me having they've been on a health journey themselves, they've lost most of the weight themselves, or with
Yeah.
some other support or something. Maybe it's normally driven by an event. So let's say someone's 55, they go to the doctors to get an annual checkup or whatever. Oh my God, suddenly this is high, this is high, this is a real risk. The doctor has a stern word with them. Okay, I need to make a change. That's the trigger. They take, should we say, generic advice or
I see.
fairly useful advice, medical advice perhaps, which is a side
Yeah.
piece we make them onto. Get so far, and then they get stuck because actually some of the methods in which they've taken to get there have either risked muscle mass, right? So you can lose weight but not fat,
Yeah.
or lose weight but not all fat, and therefore you lose muscle mass, which has all these risks that we've mentioned. And then it's very, very difficult to come out of that situation. So most people come to me for, say, maybe 3 to 4 months, depending on what they have on and how kind of intensely they want to work on it. And then it's a case of how much do we need to do? How frequently do we need to chat? Because if you want to lose like 3 or 4 kilos, might not sound like much. And you've also got holidays coming up and stuff. Let's just take it slow and steady. We don't need to do anything crazy. Some people want to kind of
Yeah.
get on with it and build the system. Some people want to develop a greater understanding. I also want to like build up some strength and build up muscle mass and stuff. So I've had more people recently. So lose most of the weight, then they come to me, lose the last bit, and then when they get here, it's a very exciting kind of inflection point, should we say, where it's like, oh, okay, I'm up, my best health ever. They're 40s or 50s and they feel like they're in their 30s. They're stronger,
Yeah.
they're leaner, and the kind of world of opportunity has opened up to them, which they never previously kind of had access to. So it's like, oh, well, I've always actually wanted to do a triathlon, but I thought that was totally not feasible because I was always, 20 kilos overweight or something. Or I never thought I'd have the
Yeah.
fitness or the energy levels to go and do that thing alongside a full-time job or whatever. So, and then it's a case of, okay, well, what do you want to do next? Do you want my help with it? So for
Yeah.
most people, it's say 3 months, 3 or 4 months. Some people get towards the end of that, and then if they want to, we can have a discussion, and that again is totally customized to the individual. So
Yeah. I see. So kind of like getting to that point of feeling healthier, more energy, etc., then realizing actually there's stuff that I can now do. So then it's about helping them kind of achieve the next goal that would have previously been, thought of as impossible, I guess.
exactly. And I don't make too much of a thing of, when we start working together, especially if someone's like, I've probably got 50 pounds to lose, 20, 25 kilos or so. I go, okay,
Yeah.
let's roughly aim for that. We're going to work together for a little while. As we getting through, say month 4, most of the weights come off. It's like, what are you thinking now? Oh, let's maybe add another 5 pounds to the initial target. Okay, great. Get nearer. How are we feeling? How are we looking? What do you think? Actually, yeah, I'm probably thinking maybe 10 pounds less than the initial target, and then maybe focus on this thing. Or actually, I've noticed this being really good, or there's been a couple of challenges with this thing, so can we work on that a bit more? So there is no, should we say, perfect number or ideal goal for an individual. It's very much based on what they want, and that's the way that I think coaching and health advice should be delivered, provided, I guess the caveat to that is providing overall health kind of markers are taken into account. So someone might say, I want to get as strong as possible. But if that getting as strong as possible means their diabetes risk goes up tenfold and their cholesterol goes up 50%, then I would say that's probably not the best route for them. But if it's like, I want to get strong,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
also want to be lean and be able to, when I'm a grandparent, I want to be able to play with the kids and still have the energy and stuff to do that and the flexibility and stuff to do that. Fantastic. So
Yeah, yeah.
individuals have their goals, but I'll provide not guidance on goals, but I'll be very realistic with them. It's like, okay, well, if you do want to get that lean or if you do want to get to that stage, these could be the, not necessarily risks, but factors to consider. Some things are going to take a bit more sacrifice than others. I don't
Yeah.
really work with people who want to be stepping on stage in a bodybuilding competition. Some people do that. Some people only work with those people. That's not me. That's not my background. That's not the way I want to work. That in itself is very short-term, temporary, actually not dangerous, but the variables you're controlling to get to that level are not healthy, right? That is not something that someone should aspire to look like long term. That's just not realistic. It's kind of
It's
bordering on
pushing something
dangerous.
to a limit, isn't it? It's over-indexing
100%.
on one particular kind of area, isn't it?
Yes. It's like I don't know, Formula One driving is significantly more dangerous than me driving down the road to go to Tesco's, right?
Yeah.
They're totally different. Oh, they're both driving, but one is at the very peak and the very extreme, and they have entire teams around them, but they're still, risking their life. There's many unknowns and X, Y, and Z. So that's not really the world I get into, but achievable, sustainable. Sustainable is the key word, really.
Yeah, no, I can tell that from what you described about your journey, what led you there, and that data-driven approach as well, and certainly like the way you're describing that as fat loss versus weight loss, because you say muscle gain is important and is something that should be there, so you could weigh the same or more than someone and be in a far better position than you were previously because of that ratio, that composition.
Absolutely. Even if I take myself, so I have been 86 kilos was my very heaviest. I'm now about 71. So 15 kilos, like
Yeah,
I'm not, don't have a big frame. I'm 5'10", medium shoulders, maybe narrow shoulders. Like I'm not a big guy. 15 kilos extra is a lot on me, and I felt it. I really, really felt it.
yeah,
But I would say my strength now is probably more or less what it was in my early 20s when I was up at 86 kilos, right? But my
mm.
health markers, my energy, my sleep, I didn't have blood tests at that time, but like all of those things would have been not good, especially energy. I knew day to day my energy, like walking up the stairs, shouldn't feel that way, especially when I was so active. And I think if you were to look at, I don't want to focus too much on aesthetics, that's not really my style, but if you were to look at two pictures of me side by side, top off at 86 kilos, top off now at 70, 71, you'd probably say I looked maybe physically bigger now because of the leanness. So when we kind of see a picture of someone,
I see.
we might think, oh, they're an absolute monster. They're so, jacked, whatever I want to say. But so often that's lighting, let's be honest. That can do
Yeah,
dramatic wonders, angles and all these things. But leanness, if you have some muscle, but you're very lean, and basically what that means is you can see what muscle is there. Whereas I could be 10, 15 kilos
yeah,
heavier, and I can't see the definition, therefore I just look kind of smaller or like less defined, it's like less impact. So
mm.
all the other benefits of just having a lighter body aside, just being lean for most people will look significantly better, feel significantly better, reduce risks of basically anything. And it's more sustainable. Like
Yeah, yeah,
holding a higher body weight is, should we say, taxing on the body. If you're not,
yeah.
don't say not designed to be that way, but like it didn't feel good for me being 86 kilos. My body was not meant to be that high. 70 kilos feels lightweight, easy. I can do whatever I want. Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I've seen people that would definitely kind of fit into that a lot of heavy gym work, but actually would get out of breath walking upstairs. They wouldn't have very good mobility and all that because they
Yeah,
were the wrong size composition for their general fitness and frame.
yeah, absolutely. Yes, I think the younger generation is probably most at risk of these things, which I don't tend to work with those kinds of people. I would say, I mentioned the event thing earlier. People typically have to go through an event, a health scare or something, and that tends to happen kind of 30s onwards. I say
Yeah.
30s is quite an interesting one. I've turned 30 this year. Um, you start to read lots of articles about, oh, what should I do in my 30s? And everyone's like, start taking your health seriously because, when you're in your 40s and 50s, it only gets harder and all these things. So it's quite interesting. I started this business at 25 and I was a young guy, and you can get away with things, should we say. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but when you get a bit older, it's I can't speak too much for experience, as I said, just turned 30, but I've worked with enough people who you can do a lot right and struggle if you're in your 50s or so. That's not to say it's impossible. It's definitely not possible. It's certainly doable. But you have to work, I wouldn't say harder, but definitely smarter to get similar or better results than when you're younger.
I see. So where then does the kind of DNA, that testing of the saliva, and any other kind of testing, to be honest, where does that fit into the scheme of adopting that right individual personal approach? What can it
Good
tell you that
question.
you wouldn't otherwise get insight into?
Yes, good question. So, firstly, an important differentiator, I'll say blood testing and then saliva testing for DNA. So, saliva testing DNA is what I do. That's timeless, should we say? So, I could do a test at 2 years old, 50 years old, 80 years old. The data would be the same because my DNA
Yep.
fundamentally does not change. There are variable elements within genetics, but your DNA blueprint does not change. So that's a very important thing. If I say something that sometimes people then kick off about, oh, well, there are elements of your DNA that change. There are pieces that vary, but your fundamental blueprint that makes you who you are is just set in stone, basically. So the more we can understand that, the earlier we
Yep.
can understand that, generally the better. Number two is blood testing. So I don't kind of compulsorily, I don't buy have people don't have to do that with me, but often they were like, oh, I've had a blood test with the doctor. Um,
Yep.
Here's my data, can you have a look, sort of thing. I can, offer some vague insights and guidance. Those are snapshots in time. So that's a very different set of data. So for example, I could go and get a blood test today and they take my blood today. In a week's time, I get the results. That is a snapshot from the 27th of August. My numbers are
Yep.
this, 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 and this. In the next week, they might change. Over the next 6 months, they might change, etc. So that's useful, but ongoing, because the DNA stuff is an understanding for the rest of your life. So what does it
Yeah,
tell
I
you?
see.
And actually using both in line with each other is probably the best thing. And I've had many clients who do that, and that's quite a nice thing to see. But yeah,
Yep.
what does DNA testing tell you? So firstly, the majority of results around food. So the way I like to describe it is, I have brown eyes, I have brown hair, I have, this facial structure. These things are defined by
Yep.
my genetic variants. So we have this gene which determines, say, hair color. There are multiple variants of those genes, so say blonde hair, red hair, brown hair. We can see the impact of those variations. Okay. What we don't see is that there are also genetics, well, genes and then genetic variants for things that happen inside of us. So the way my body absorbs vitamin D will depend on which of the variants I have. The way my body absorbs protein and breaks that down, the way my body deals with carbohydrates and sugars, the way my body deals with different fats, the way my body deals with vitamin B12 or folate, right, depends on which of these
Yep.
gene variants I have. And so basically what a DNA test does is it finds out, it goes, oh, okay, you have this version. This version means, firstly, you can look at things individually. So this version means this, but also in combination with, you also have this variant and this variant. these three put together put you at greater risk of this thing. So some of these are
I see.
health risks. So, for example, am I allowed to swear on this or not?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there's one gene which is colloquially called the motherfucker gene, MHTFR or something.
Yeah.
And basically what that does is folate comes into the body and then it gets methylated is the term. It turns into methylfolate, okay? Methylfolate then goes and does some stuff in the body. If I have a certain gene variant, that folate doesn't turn into methylfolate, and therefore it can't go and do, or most of it doesn't. Therefore, it can't then go and do all of those steps afterwards. So if you have a set of dominoes, right, and you knock over the first one, the rest of them fall over. If I don't set off that first one, none of the others fall over. Or if I have
Yeah.
10 lines of dominoes and I set 2 of them off but not the other 8, and at the end of that line of dominoes is something that's really important for my heart health. So basically, there's multiple different impacts, but if I don't knock over that first thing, then my homocysteine levels go up. This is correlated with greater risk of heart disease, right? So my
Yeah.
body being able to take a nutrient it gets from food, turning it into the form which it can actually use, and then all the knock-on effects of that, which just happens like I don't see any of that, I don't really feel any of that, but suddenly
Yeah.
get told by my doctor, oh, you're at risk of heart attack, or oh, your stroke risk is high, something like that, right? Not good. What do we do? Well,
No, no.
I have that variant, so I take methylfolate specifically via supplement. So I go, basically my body can't turn this into this. So rather than just throwing more of this thing
Yeah.
at it, I'll just take a bit of this by supplement. Perfect. That then goes and sort of stuff out. Similar with vitamin B12, so cobalamin, and then our body uses methylcobalamin. It's like this methyl thing, which is kind of like a group which adds on to. You have a chemical, you just add on something, then it can go and do stuff. It's like trying to put a tape into a CD recorder, into a CD thing in your laptop, right? It just doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you can't watch the tape,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can't listen to the music. If I had a CD, I have a CD, great, that goes in, now I can listen to it, I can watch a DVD, whatever it is. So it's kind of, that step is missing in many people. And there are many genes, there's many nutrients that need to be absorbed the right way. So vitamin D, my
Yeah,
vitamin
yeah.
D efficiency is way down. So I supplement more so with vitamin D than most people, because my VDR, my vitamin D receptor, is very inefficient, basically, because I have a certain genetic variant which knocks it down.
Yeah, I see.
So there's all those sorts of things from both a macronutrient, so proteins, carbs, fats, and different types of fats within that, sugars, I guess, as well, and then the vitamins and minerals, which we call micronutrients because they're consumed in much smaller quantities. And the main kind of important thing is the outcomes, right? So reduced risk of various heart health risks. It's going to be diabetes, heart disease,
Yeah.
all these sorts of things. Reduced inflammation in many ways. So inflammation is kind of one of the underlying drivers of many health risks and diseases. It's also a bit of a drain on energy. So inflammation, in a kind of colloquial manner, is your body fighting itself.
Yeah.
So, our body has X amount of energy. If it spends 10% of its energy fighting myself, what a big bloody waste of time that is, right? When it can be
Yeah, yeah.
repairing, it can be fighting disease, it can be boosting my immune system, it can be doing all these different. What a waste of time if it's just fighting itself. That's a load of rubbish. It can be getting rid of
Yeah,
toxins
yeah.
that cause damage. So yeah, stuff like that. It could reduce that. Energy is a big one. So the B12, vitamin B12, often known because vegans, vegetarians basically can't get it through food. It's very difficult to get it through food. So realistically should be supplementing to get reasonable amounts of vitamin B12, or eating
Yeah.
kind of fortified food, should we say. But if you're eating meat, you might be okay. B12 is primarily associated with energy levels. So if you have a variant that means you don't absorb it very well, and you make up for that with a supplement or with adequate intake of that, then that will support energy levels. If you have more energy, I'm a big fan of looking at the knock-on effects on things. So if we can look at the root causes of problems, so weight gain, right? Obviously too many calories, but what else is causing struggle there? Oh, actually, no, I'm not sleeping very well, which makes me hungrier, right? As a hormone response, when you don't sleep well, your hunger hormone goes up. There's a hunger hormone called ghrelin. It sounds like gremlin, like it's horrible, it's bad. I think that's quite adequate, quite appropriate. That literally increases when we don't sleep well. Well, we can say stay in a calorie deficit to lose weight, but that's a lot harder if you're hungry all the time. So why don't we look at sleep? Make sleep better, manage that, and then the next day you wake up and you go, actually, I'm not that hungry today. I'm just going to have a reasonable plate of food rather than a massive plate of food. Fantastic. You're going to lose weight probably without even trying. If your energy levels suck and you are trying to do a new exercise routine, or even having the energy, because there's kind of mental and physical energy, having the mental energy to plan and go, what will I have for dinner tonight? Oh, well, actually, I'm probably going to be working late. Normally, I would pick up a fast food on the way home. If I just took 5 minutes, I'm probably going to walk past this thing at lunchtime today. Maybe I'll just grab a few bits. I can whack it in the frying pan when I get home. It'll be on the table in 10 minutes. Perfect.
Yeah.
The energy to go and do that. But now, what drives the energy to go and do that? Let's look at these things. Maybe it's vitamins. Maybe it's things in your genetic responses. Maybe it's certain foods that you're eating throughout the day that are kind of draining your energy. Resolve those. You then do a bit more, say, forward planning, or you may be a little bit more active because you feel like it. And also with activity, if you are more active, you tend to feel more energy, which makes sure that you are more active. So it's a very nice self-fulfilling kind of prophecy once you've got into that circle. Things like that. So rather than just going, okay, it's just thermodynamics, calories in, calories out, just follow this meal plan. Good luck. It's okay. You might be able to follow that for 2 weeks, maybe a month at best. Great. Big waste of time in 2 months because you're back at where you started. What we actually need to do is look at what is driving those things. What are the foods I'm eating day to day? How are those impacting the way I feel? What do you need more of or less of based on the data that we have? Let's look at things like sleep. How do you manage stress? Does that really, really impact you? Let's look at that. Let's talk about that. And then starting off, basically trying to get the ball rolling down the hill, should we say, building momentum as easily as possible. So it's never about a massive drastic change at the start. It's always about trying to unlock that next little bit of energy, that next bit of feeling better, which then enables you to do the next step. And when you do the next step, you feel even better. And then you do the next step and you feel even better. You do the next step and so on and so forth. And then in 2-3 months' time, it's like, oh, wow, I've achieved this, this, and this without doing dramatic changes because you've only ever had to change little things. The right things, I will say, at individual times. So that's the way I go about it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, what you were saying there about the DNA testing and what that can tell you and how that can help enable to make the right decisions around nutrition, supplementation as well. It sounds like a lot of those things you just wouldn't naturally be aware of. They're invisible by nature, right? So you can only make an informed decision if you have that data that you're missing.
100%. It's a shame it's so new. It's kind of maybe past 5 to 8 years, but there's going to be more and more companies kind of coming to the front. DNA testing still has a bit of a association with ancestry and ancestry. It's kind of lifestyle. That's like, oh, it's a fun thing to learn. That's great, but has no real impact on your health. What's a separate discussion? And then the other one is like hereditary disease risks, right? Which are an interesting one because, so earlier I was talking about the variable element of your genes. So your blueprint is fixed, but there's a variable element called epigenetics. Epi, I think, is the Latin for like on top of. So it's like the bit which sits on top of the gene, which kind of dictates how it works, but this is a variable element which is impacted by sleep, nutrition, exercise, your fitness levels, supplementation, etc. If I have a risk of developing heart disease or developing a certain type of cancer, right? This is going to vary from person to person, but for me personally, that would probably, if I knew about it, it's like, Alex, you are likely to get prostate cancer or something. Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to spend my entire life worrying about getting prostate cancer. And the act of worrying, we'll call that stress. Stress is one of the biggest drivers of poor health, right? From a kind of underlying
Yeah.
thing, it can drive inflammation, it can drive poor sleep, it can drive poor nutrition choices, it can stop us from exercising, it reduces our ability to recover. So basically, by knowing this piece of information that I can't really impact, I feel more stress, and the stress impacts what we call this epigenetics. So basically, like based on my lifestyle, how healthy is my lifestyle? It has a negative
Yeah.
impact on my lifestyle, which then increases the chance that I'm going to get that thing. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. See how that works?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's compounding the problem. So how do you then tackle that? Is it not surely better off to know and be able to take proactive measures?
Good question. So the testing I use, there are many DNA tests you can buy out there. Again, many of them are ancestry
Yeah.
based. There's a company called ancestry.com. Many of them are health focused. Some of them are kind of disease based, should we say. You have risks of these
Yeah.
diseases. The test I use is entirely focused on health outcomes and does not tell
Yeah.
you, basically does not tell you the disease risks that you have. Because my
Okay.
belief, not saying this is right or wrong, but this is the way I believe it, is that if we understand what is right for our body and the right way to go about kind of managing our health, by focusing on those actions, we're doing everything that we would want to do, right?
I
I
see.
don't, if someone said you could get prostate cancer in 30 years, I'd go, okay, well, I'm sleeping really well. I'm very active. I'm not really eating rubbish. I'm managing my stress. Could probably do better with that. There's no like, oh, you just take this supplement and your risk of prostate cancer disappears, right? So I'm already doing
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
things. So therefore, is it useful for me to know? Probably not, because it's only going to drive up my stress. So if I just focus on the things which I know will improve my health as a whole, and kind of side point, I call myself the DNA fat loss coach, but it's fat loss through kind of improved health. Fat loss is often achieved
Yeah.
as an outcome or as a side effect, if you will, of improving your overall health. And I think
Yeah. That makes
many
sense.
of the coaches or methods out there are very primarily weight focused,
Yeah.
or even say fat focused, but fat loss focused, but do it in a way which, I'm not saying will like harm their health, an individual's health, but could put at risk some health elements because they're very short-term focused. So if someone came to me and was like,
Yeah.
Alex, you
Yeah.
just
I
need
see.
to lose as much weight as possible, you could be like, well, just don't eat for 2 weeks. You're going to lose loads of weight, but you're
Yeah.
also going to risk nutrient deficiency and this and this and this, right? If you don't do it well, you don't do it
Yeah.
properly.
Yeah.
So they're not two competing goals, like they're kind of in line or correlated with each other, but one might require you to turn left at this junction, one might require you to turn right at the other junction. And because I'm much more of a sustainable kind of long-term approach kind of guy, I will generally prioritize like long-term health over an immediate short-term win that might bounce back in a month
Yeah.
or two.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. They're coming from. They cover the same broad topic or the same kind of initial thing hook that people are looking for, right? But one is coming from a very different set of principles and foundations and values, isn't it?
Yes, nicely put. Yes, because I go sounds a bit wishy-washy. Yeah, I'm so data-driven, but also it's like I like to ask the question, how do you feel? I go on calls with people and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, how are things going? You know, we've got these numbers, this data, etc. But how are you feeling? Oh, well, yeah, I feel good, but this challenge, okay, cool. Let's work on that, because if that goes away, yeah, the bloating, the digestive issues, the low energy, how much easier does everything else get? Oh, and by the way,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
digestive issues are a sign that, again, it sounds a bit hand wavy, but things aren't in balance. So
Mm.
I was actually having a discussion with a client a couple of hours ago. I won't go too much into details because it's not the nicest topic, but about one's stool, should we say, right? Your
Yeah.
what comes out of your body when you go in the toilet is a very good indicator of how, should we say, happy your gut is. If it's,
Yeah.
should we say, messy and smelly, that is a very strong indicator that your gut is not in a good place. It can't lie to you. It just can't lie to you. Like we can lie to ourselves.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't eat that much. Oh, I don't feel that stressed. Oh, I slept quite well. Oh, I
Yeah.
skipped one
Yeah.
run this week, but I did another. But do your business in the toilet before you flush the toilet, have a look down. If it looks as it should, happy days, your body's probably it's not the only indicator, but it's an indicator. But if it's not the way it should be, then your body can't lie to you. That is an indicator that something is not the way it should be.
Yeah. No, it makes sense, and I can see how you're building for like ongoing health, as you say, kind of pivoted away from what you found at that previous company of the quick fix and the dependency, the not sustainable, not healthy habits. And I can see that that data driven approach is obviously very foundational to the way you're building this, as is that personalization. And with the way you work with clients, for any other coaches in similar space, or even in different spaces, what for you, what does a good client experience for you look like? I can tell that personalization is going to be there, but I'd be kind of interested to hear your other thoughts on what good client engagement, client experience, and being outcome focused looks like.
Good question. One word that jumped out to me then, which does actually relate to what I'm about to talk about, is dependency. Um,
Yep.
I, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I see many folk who have personal trainers, who have had personal trainers for a year, 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years. And it can often appear, because they're paid on a monthly basis, that they're not necessarily motivated by the same goal. If
Yep.
they truly achieve success, they would not need your help. My goal is not to have someone depend on me. It is to, throughout the process of helping someone, provide them the knowledge and understanding so that they can go and do it themselves. Right. So it's a bit more work up front. There's a lot of not like deep scientific knowledge, but like rather than me just giving a one-word answer, what's better, X or Y, which is a really difficult thing. Like
Yep.
they're so situational, but it's like, let's take 10 minutes and actually understand where I'm coming from. Because if you understand that, next time you have these questions, you'll be able to answer them yourself. And then later on in the coaching process, it makes me quite lazy, because it's like, you work it out, you know the answer to this. And then they go and do it. It's like, great, you don't need me. My
Yeah.
goal is not for you to need me. It's to get to the end of this coaching and you go, I've achieved my result. I know everything that I need to know. Great, thank you very much, Alex. And that's the way that I think it should be done. So on that basis,
Yeah.
a good client to me, firstly, I find it easier, probably more joyful in all parts, for all parties, work with people who have a foundation in place. They are what I would call healthy, and they would call themselves healthy. They are not too far from their goal. They've probably they probably had a journey to this point. So 10 kilos, 20 kilos, whatever it is, several stone.
Yeah.
And it's just that the last 20%, should we say. They have routine structures in place. They're working as hard as they need to work. That's a very important note. many people believe that the only way to achieve more progress is to work harder. But actually, with the data that we have and with my experience and kind of insight, it's so easy for me to go, oh, okay, well, you're doing this thing, right? Well, let's just swap this for this and you'll lose another 2 kilos, great. And it can be as simple as that. Sounds crazy, but it's so easy to overlook things because there's so much confusing data out there that tells you what's good and what's bad and what you should skip out, what you should
Yeah,
eat more
definitely.
of. People are so, I don't want to say confused, but ultimately they don't know what's right.
Overwhelmed?
Overwhelmed, yeah, 100%. Sometimes into inaction, which is a really difficult position to be in, but often just like, no, I
Yeah.
believe this is right. Why is it not working for me? And I go, actually,
Yeah,
they come to me open. So that's point number two. They have to be open. So if they're not open to change, or for me to point out, I don't like the phrase what they're doing wrong, but where the opportunities are. Like some people
yeah.
want to keep on doing what they're doing and have the excuse that they are doing everything right but not getting results. Some people want that, and that's okay. Like I cannot help them, and I'm okay with that. They need to come
Yeah.
to a point where they are so frustrated or so like, you know what, I am open to change. I am open to new ideas. Let's have a conversation with someone. Some people don't want to be told like what the opportunities are. That's okay. So open, looking to develop understanding.
Yeah.
As I said, I want to work with someone who is curious and gets on the calls and is like, oh, I want to soak up every bit of knowledge and I have all these questions because I want these answers and oh, this is really interesting. Like that excites me,
Yeah.
that excites them. It just makes the process really enjoyable for both parties. It increases buy-in, I think. If someone is more
Mm.
bought in, then they're more likely to follow through on actions, and actions are ultimately what drive results. Um, what else could I say? Um, Open-minded, looking to develop understanding, um, uh, not got anything to prove, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
some people, the phrase is often like, oh, this might be a stupid question, but I mean, at least those people are asking the question. Many people won't ask the question because they're scared of how it comes across or how they sound. So being open to, I mean, I always basically, any question is a good question. There's almost always something we can gain from it, even if it's just me learning more about
Yeah. Yeah.
where the individual is at. That helps me help them more. So if someone is very closed and very like, um, what's the word? If someone doesn't believe in my approach, they're probably right because it probably won't work for them because they're not going to do what I'm going to suggest they do because they're closed to the ideas I'm going to bring to the table. So someone
Yeah.
has
They
to
have to be open
be
to engaging with the process.
exactly, yes. Yeah, this applies to any coach in any space, right? The individual has to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's why I like. It's not the only way to do acquisition, but it's why I like inbound quite a lot. I like to put myself out there, and
Yeah.
people come to me, or people show some level of intent, and then I maybe reach out and I'm like, oh hey, saw you followed me or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably can't help, but if on the off chance that you want to discuss something, let me know. Let's have a chat. And then having a proper, like, meaningful conversation with someone, understanding their goals, being realistic with them. Um, I like to be very upfront because the the health and wellness space is so messed up, should we say, to put it nicely. So
Yeah.
bloody messed up. Oh my God, there's so much rubbish out there. People come to me and it's like, oh, I can lose 20 kilos in bloody 4 days or something. Like some people's
Yeah. Yeah.
expectations are dramatic, and that's part of my job is to be fully transparent and honest with them. So the best ones, they say the words, and I do listen out for this on sales calls. It's like, I've made the mistakes, I've done the short-term things, I'm looking for sustainability, I'm looking to develop understanding, and often they don't really know where their kind of goal, like the line in the sand is for their goal, but they
Yeah,
trust in that if they're doing the right things, they'll get to a point where, or they'll kind of go through the journey of discovering where that is, and then they trust that we can then work together to find out what kind of their ultimate end game is, should we say.
yeah, that
But
makes
that's always open
a
to,
lot of sense.
yeah. Those are the things which spring to mind.
Yeah, I think
If anything else jumps out, I'll let you know. But yeah,
no, that makes a lot of sense. I can certainly see why that inbound works, and with your audience, why it makes sense that a lot of them will reach for the quick win, the quick fix, realize it's not what it's cracked up to be. It's not sustainable. X months down the line, whatever the quick result was or wasn't, they're not in a better place. Therefore, yeah, if you can get in front of them, help educate them, they're definitely going to be more aligned to your philosophy and therefore your data driven approach and willing to give it a go. So that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I can certainly see how a lot of that industry and what people are being fed with and put in front of them and on social media everywhere else is unrealistic and counter to that longevity, that health span, and those other points you talked to, which is really, really interesting. So no, thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people find that super interesting. But for you then, as the DNA fat loss coach, what's next for you, your business, or what's the bigger impact you're trying to make? Where do you see things going?
good question. Interesting question. I've kind of ummed and ahed about doing group programs or scaling greater than one-to-one. I think my
Yeah,
challenge with that is in the very nature of the work that I do. It's so individual and personalized. Um, like John, fictional name, John comes to me with X problem, and I go, okay, well, let's look at sleep is a massive thing for him and nutrition.
mm,
Uh, Dave comes to me and exercise is causing him lots of problems. He's doing it, I'm not
yeah,
trying to say the wrong way, but he doesn't realize that it's impacting this and this and this, and then he feels rubbish, and then he eats the wrong food. Okay, we're just going to talk about exercise for like the first 3 sessions. So everyone's approach is totally different. There's no like, right, you've joined, we're going to do this, 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 and this in this order. Like it's so individual. So
yeah,
that's one of my problems. So at some point there may come a time when I train up other coaches in the way that I work and scale that way. I have gone through it doesn't sound too existential or too like I've had a
yeah.
third life crisis or whatever we call it. I've gone through a bit of a lifestyle balance realization over the past few months,
Yeah,
let's say. So I've done quite a lot of traveling recently, getting married in just over a week. And in the past, I've committed basically all of my time to business. And
yeah,
for better in some cases, but for worse in others. I think a health professional, whatever you want to call it, should always put themselves first. Because if they're not looking after their mental health, their physical health, why should they help others, basically?
yeah,
And having more fulfillment outside of work, having more community outside of work, having more purpose and meaning, should we say, outside of work. Previously, I've kind of got 90% of all of those things from business.
I see.
And
Yeah,
I don't think that's the way forward for me. I don't think it has served me in many ways. And I don't want to say like I'm stepping back from the business, but I have stepped back a bit over this summer. I've done lots of traveling and met lots of amazing people and done some really cool stuff. And it kind of makes you realize it's not all about work. I want to, as I go forward, I'm coming up to 5 years now running this. I want to build, I want to build my business for longevity, which is a nice
yeah,
tie-in, but also for sustainability, for like lifestyle sustainability. So I want it to work for me. If I want to travel more, I should be able to travel more and work, not work and then maybe do a bit of travel. right? So it's that kind of prioritization piece.
Yeah, that makes
Uh,
sense.
so being more, I have been very, very good at this in the past, say, year or so, being more, putting more effort into qualification. So only work with those people who truly kind of excite me when I get on a call with them. It's like, oh, I can help this person so
Yeah, yeah.
much. This kind of person, wow, we can have so much fun together. Wicked. I want to really look forward to every coaching call that I do. Not that I've like dreaded coaching calls in the past, but um,
Yeah,
doing more, running the business more for me, sounds selfish, so
yeah,
that it's better for other people. Um, I've always had coaches myself. My current sales coach who I'm working with, I had a very good discussion with him a couple of weeks ago. And one of the key takeaways was I love doing the coaching. That's really why I got into this thing. What I like
yeah,
less is the social media, it's the messaging, it's the posting, it's the comments, it's the
yeah,
dealing
yeah.
with people who just want to argue because they're having a bad day. It's those sort of things just drag me down a bit. They drain my energy and it's not good for
Mm.
anyone. Running my business, I guess the acquisition side of my business, more in a giving manner feels good for me. So I'm going through a bit of a transition there. Um, in fact,
Yeah,
if this is helpful for any of your clients, then or your listeners, then this could be a positive. I just wrote a LinkedIn post about it today, actually. I'm running free 30-minute, 30-minute coaching sessions, just to individuals who basically have questions and want to get help with no
yeah,
expectation
yeah.
at all. It's absolutely not a sales call. Those are separate calls. If someone comes to me and says, I'm interested in learning about your program, we get in a sales call. If someone's like, I have some questions, can we, I saw your offer, can we talk about that? Brilliant. We'll do a 30-minute call. You'll get
Yeah, yeah.
experience of how I work. I will help you 100%. That's my goal, to help you go away and feel like you've got some insights and some kind of action points. If that turns into people who want to work with me, brilliant. It's the best way, I think the best way to, I don't say like I'm proving myself, but like sometimes people read what I do and it's quite hard to actually grasp how I go about what I do. So the best way is just to do it.
Yeah, I see. Yeah,
And I just want to do more of it because I enjoy it. I get to help people. It feels good. It's fulfilling for me. I come away at the end of the work day and I'm like, oh, I did loads of good stuff today. That was really good. I'm excited to go and do it again
mm.
tomorrow. Whereas if I just sit on LinkedIn in the comments, arguing with people over nuances that don't really matter and getting triggered by all that sort of stuff, that's just a bit of a waste of life, in my opinion. So finding that balance
No, that
between,
makes
yeah,
yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I think you're not alone. I think a lot of other people in the coaching consulting space have the same things. They love that delivery of coaching, but also I think it sounds like you're applying a lot of the principles that you bring to health longevity for your clients, actually applying that to your own business almost as well, but very much the same principles, I think.
yeah, yeah. It, it sounds, it's kind of like, why didn't I realize that in the past? Do you know what I mean? I kind of siloed work. I mean, work was such a massive, massive part of my life, and it still is. I'm kind of going through that transition. But it's like, why haven't I realized that in the past? Because that is the way that it is. Um, yeah, it, doing it in a way that fulfills me more so that other people can get more from me, and can continue to get, and I can continue to have an impact for years, ideally decades to come, right? I don't see this being oh, well, in 5 years' time, I'll get a real job. Like, no, I think I'm relatively unemployable now. I think the idea of going back into a full-time job would be um, unfeasible for me. I don't know. I've become so
Yeah, yeah,
accustomed to the style, the way that I don't say can do what I want, but within reason, I can get to control my own
yeah,
time and stuff. I don't
and
know how I
you're
deal
very
with other people
mission
telling me.
driven as well,
Yeah,
which makes a lot
mission.
of sense.
That's something I wanted to just point out, if you don't mind. I was reading a
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
Sales coach sent me it. What's it called? Start with No. It's technically a negotiation
Okay.
book. Um, negotiation. I mean, he says everything in life is a negotiation, even like going shopping or chatting with your partner or whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can feel that way, sometimes not. And basically the concept of the book is, let's say I'm on a sales call, the first thing I'll say is something along the lines of, if at any point you feel this is not for you, just tell me and we can just end it there. If that's 5 minutes in, if that's 10
Yeah.
minutes in, if that's half an hour in, if you're not getting the right vibes from me, we'll just cut this off. Let's not waste any more time. If I feel that way, if I feel I can't help you based on your responses, I will tell you, is that fair? And every single time they say yes, absolutely. And they tend to kind of respect that. It's not like, I'm looking to get the sale today, I'm going to sell to you, blah, blah, blah. It's like, let's see if this is the right thing to do. Anyway, the concept in the book was talking about having a kind of mission and purpose statement, which I've always thought was a bit wishy-washy, if I'm being honest. It takes me a while to come around to these sorts of things. But the way he described it was quite nice. It was basically like, in a negotiation, success is defined, it's not whether you won or not. It's actually defined by basically what is your purpose or mission going into that. So if you got the sale, but you did it at 70% reduced cost, and so actually you're going to have to fire 2 of your employees because you can't deliver the thing and keep everyone employed, is that success? I would say absolutely not. So if you have a mission statement that says, I don't know, deliver this service whilst maintaining X, Y, and Z criteria, then you can go into that and say, actually, no, I'm going to back out of this deal because it doesn't fulfill these things. And I thought that was really interesting and powerful. In fact, let me just bring mine up. So I kind of had to think about how to best write my own, because I've never really thought about that. And actually, that should dictate the way I do acquisition. It should dictate the way I do sales calls. It should dictate the way I work with clients. Right. This is kind of draft one.
I'm curious, what did you land on? Yeah.
My mission and purpose is to guide committed individuals to their fat loss and health goals and support them at the very highest level so they can show up for their family and their careers. I do this by way of highly personalized one-to-one coaching focused on the most important elements the individual needs in each moment. So the key points, if I may put them out, guide committed individuals. If someone is being flaky, great. Park them to the side. I don't need to work with them. They're probably not going to do very well. If they do decide to go ahead, if they're real, put them away. They'll go and work with someone else, or they won't work with anyone, or they'll come back when they're ready. Everyone wins. Support them at the very highest level. So this is an interesting one with regards to, call it a scarcity versus abundance mindset. So in the past, I have struggled with scarcity mindset, especially around money. I think part of that is kind of the way I brought up. We were never like really short of money, but it was like we were savers. We were always save. And it's like spending money. Oh my God, why would you spend money when you can save it and put it in the bank? So I kind of worked hard to kind of invest, you say, not so much like investing in the stock market, but more investing in a property or investing into coaches. Spending thousands of pounds on coaches can seem like a massive waste of money to certain people. To me, it's now an amazing idea, right? And I have seen the rewards of that. But in the past, I've probably undersold 2 people, aka here's what I think you need, but I do it like the bare minimum to get the result. Possibly not quite get the result, but I don't. If I add any more services, I'm going to have to increase the price, and I don't think they're going to buy it if I increase the price. That sort of thing. And this kind of key takeaway from this mission statement, this part of the mission statement is, my goal is to deliver the absolute best service for their health, for their outcomes, right? And the people who really, really kind of respect that are the ones who, we go further, we spend more time together, we get deeper into it. Then they go, oh, brilliant, you've helped me achieve this. Now I want to be able to do this as well. Can I get your help with that? And that is fulfilling for me, it's fulfilling for them. Everyone wins, but it requires me to ask a little bit more in the upfront. I think that's
I see.
important. So supporting them at the very highest level basically means probably charging a little bit more, but doing so so I can basically offer more support and kind of toying with this idea of unlimited support with programs. So it's like, we'll schedule, I don't know, a call every other week. If you want to chat with me every week, if you want to chat with me twice a week sometimes, whatever you need to get your result, it's included. You're not going to pay any extra for it.
Yeah.
Most people are busy, like too busy to do that. So they're kind of once every 2 weeks, whatever is more than enough. But the options there, and I think the right people would get excited and feel good about that. And then I do this in a way of highly personalized one-to-one coaching focused on the most important elements the individual needs in each moment. Yes, so that is basically highlighting needs, goals, actions vary with time. So John, who's currently struggling with X, this week, in 2 weeks' time, might have a totally different challenge. We can't just keep hammering the same thing, expecting to get good results. We need to be able to be kind of agile to change that. So yes, I thought it was quite an interesting task that maybe other people would see value in or get insight from what I've just shared.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for sharing that first. I think that's like a really, really good insight into your mission and what you're trying to achieve and how you're trying to achieve that. But I think, beyond that is, for other people, coaches, consultants, like the importance of a genuine mission statement that isn't just there as, fake aspiration or nonsense. There's actually something there that is genuine, authentic, that allows you to operate with integrity, that, as you've very, very kind of excellently kind of illustrated, then the impact of that when you put it into practice, how it affects your acquisition, how it affects your sales calls, how it affects your delivery. I think that's a really, really good example of how you should actually leverage that as a tool, put it into practice, and how it shapes the conversations you have with clients and prospects. So no, thank you for sharing that. Really, really useful.
Excellent. Glad to hear that. There's one thing I was going to say then.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was. No, it's gone. It might come back. Sorry.
No, that's cool. I was going to say, I think we're kind of heading towards the time we got for today. But no, thank you for sharing so much about your business, but what led you to that, and that power of personalization. I think an outcome driven approach, but also alongside that personalization comes a shifting in those outcomes and goals and approach as needed. So I think a really fascinating insight into the way you work. And yeah, I can definitely see a further conversation around 2 on the table if you're up for it, to see how things develop, because yeah, really, really interesting insight. So thank you for sharing today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I've remembered the quick point. It was about the mission statement stuff.
Yeah, go for it.
In the book, it was saying one of the biggest mistakes is that people just go, mission statement is to drive a Lamborghini, is to buy a big house and buy
Yeah,
a boat or something. And those are very outcome driven rather than like process. And I think a massive part of health, business, basically anything, if you focus entirely on the outcome, it's not that helpful. I can focus on making X grand a month with all my mental power, but if it doesn't get me to do something, aka process, like that's not that useful. If I focus, if I look at my weight on the scale, I just need to drop 5 kilos, and I just really think hard about dropping 5 kilos. I'm not going to drop 5 kilos like magic. I have to think about the process that is required to go and do that. So it's like, if I run my business in the most genuine way that feels good to me, I have absolutely zero doubts that will result in monetary return. I'm not going to put a number on it, but some form of solid monetary return. It will feel good. I'm doing this for fulfillment as much as money is obviously a part of it, but fulfillment is a massive part of it.
Yeah.
And someone who's looking to lose weight, rather than just focusing on a number on the scale, the process. Okay, what are the things I'm doing? Is it drinking more water? Is it going to bed 15 minutes earlier each night? Is it going for a walk after dinner twice a week? Is it eating more protein with a meal, for example? So yeah, it's an important point. I thought I had a lot of overall tie-in to things.
No, definitely. No, thank you for for remembering that, for adding that on. Definitely agree with that. I think a lot to be said for having those kind of process goals as well as the things that are like to happen as a byproduct. I think it's important to get those the right way around, as you've
Yeah,
very well
absolutely.
illustrated. So, Alex, so thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, Matt.
No worries.